So okay, speaking about the epistles, you are you aware of the scholarship which says that some of the epistles attributed to Paul were not written by Paul?
Oh yes, I think there's only I think only 7 of the
Mm.
letters
Why?
in the New
So
Testament.
why maybe you can share with us why Western scholarship came to this conclusion
Writing style mainly.
mainly,
Um,
but that doesn't really prove anything, right? To be honest, does
I
it?
don't know. I would no. I think writing style is really a good test. When I was a
Mm.
teacher,
Mhm.
I could tell when a student had forged a paper
I see, I see.
by looking. The
Uh,
writing style would change.
but maybe it's possible that one particular person has different writing styles. It's not possible at all.
No, the writing style being different in the document itself. That's the
I
thing.
see, I see, I see, I
So,
see.
for example, when I would see that a student's writing went from being what I would expect from a Yale undergraduate
Mhm,
to
mhm,
what
mhm.
looked like a Wikipedia article. And fortunately, in the modern world, see, I could actually cut and paste a
Yeah,
string of words
text. Yeah, and search for it. Yeah,
and search for it
yeah,
online, and I
yep.
would prove that the person had copied it.
True, that's true. That's true. Yeah. Mhm,
And so that's the main thing about. So if you look at, there are 7 letters that almost all scholars believe Paul wrote. Although some of them look like they're compilations of different letters, like Second Corinthians looks like it was kind of sutured together from different letters. It
mhm,
doesn't all fit together very well.
mhm, mhm, mhm,
But if you compare those 7 letters to, especially say Ephesians and Colossians,
mhm,
um, I just used to do this with my students. I would start reading to them out of the Greek of Ephesians and Colossians, but I was translating it into English as I went
mhm,
along,
mhm,
and I would translate it very literally.
mhm, mhm,
So they could tell that one sentence in Ephesians, well, let's
mhm,
start with Colossians because it was written before Ephesians. Whoever wrote Ephesians used Colossians as a model and
mhm,
copied it out and then changed it. So I'd start with Colossians and I would start reading, and I would read like 200 words, and I wouldn't get to the end of one sentence.
mm, okay. Okay. Mm, mm,
Um, and then I would read from Ephesians,
mhm,
a very, very similar sentence.
mhm,
And it was very clear that whoever wrote Ephesians was copying from Colossians, but
mhm,
also making it longer.
mhm, mm,
And it would
okay.
go for like for 300 words.
Mhm, mm,
You could count 300 Greek words without the end of the sentence.
mm,
And then you just go back to Paul's letters and you say, do we ever find this in Paul? No. Yeah, he's capable of writing long sentences. We call these things from the Latin periodic sentences. People were taught, highly educated people were taught to write periodic sentences, by which we just mean they just pile up and pile up and pile up clauses upon clauses upon clauses.
mhm. I see. I see. Mhm.
When I was with her on a day that we thought was going to be sunny, but then it wasn't so sunny after all, and we wandered over to a house where we saw an old man who was sitting in the front yard with a dog which had a waggy tail. And see what I'm doing?
Yes. Yes. You're dragging the story. The
I'm
story.
just
Yeah.
dragging the sentence along.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. Yes.
That's the way Ephesians and Colossians are written,
I see. I see.
and
Okay.
it's not like Paul's letters.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So this is how you. I mean, this is how scholars
Well, not only
detect.
that, but then you start looking at ideas.
Mhm,
Do the
mhm,
theological ideas match? Well, no,
mhm,
they don't. Um,
mhm, mhm, mhm,
the kinds of the kinds of theology among these different letters
mhm,
changes,
mhm,
and it's complicated. I admit it's complicated, and a lot of people don't agree with it. They just say, "Oh,
mhm,
you critical scholars are just making this stuff up as you go on." But I
mhm,
would say no. This makes a lot of sense.
mhm,
You compare writing style to theological content to ideas, and sometimes there are anachronisms, things that you think
mhm,
this couldn't have happened in Paul's life.
mhm, mhm,
Like when
mhm,
you get to Second Timothy and Titus,
mhm,
they just don't look like stuff would have happened in Paul's life. So it's complicated, but yeah, we believe that there are 13 letters in the New Testament that claim to be by Paul, and we think only 7 of them are probably undoubtedly by Paul.
I see. I see. Yeah, this is
And
something
then,
I just this is something I
and
actually just came across. Yeah.
yeah, and then it's a level of agreement. So, for example, I believe First Thessalonians is definitely by Paul, but Second Thessalonians is not.
Oh,
But then
this
there are
is
some,
this is new for me. I didn't know
yeah.
this.
So some professors believe that no, Second Thessalonians is also by Paul. And so then, you get into Colossians. Some people will say Colossians is by Paul, but Ephesians is not, because they're very similar. It's pretty clear that whoever wrote Ephesians was copying parts of Colossians. And I say, no, they're both not by Paul, but they're written by different people.
Mm-hmm.
And I say they're different.
Yeah,
I say they're different people because there are little tiny clues in the text. For example, the author of Colossians praises people who write in witty speech, salty language, he says. Whereas the author of Ephesians, who has copied a ton of Colossians, he condemns salty speech. Well, why? So, yeah, so I would say that of the 13 letters in the New Testament that claim to be by Paul, only 7 of them are actually by Paul.
I see. So yeah, this actually begs the question that just popped into my mind just now when you were talking about the authorship of these epistles. Why the reliance on Paul? Then I mean, if these letters were not written by Paul, why can't the original authors just say, "Oh, I wrote this. Paul didn't write this. I wrote this." Yeah.
Well, they were writing a generation or so after Paul, and they wanted to piggyback on his reputation.
And
they thought if they published a letter and they could publish it making people think it was by Paul, it would carry more weight.
So
this happened all the time in the ancient world. We have letters that claim to be by Plato that we don't believe Plato wrote.